What's up guys, Uncle Scott here with a video on how to cook a steak in a carbon steel skillet. I'm starting here with a nice steak. This one is a New York strip, close to 1 pound and about $1 zillion these days. This method also works nicely for other cuts too, such as ribeyes. I'll be cooking on my gas cooktop and the pan I'm using here is an 11-inch Debouillé Mineral B Pro. What I like about cooking steak in carbon steel is that the carbon steel can handle really high heat. And a good quality pan like this Debouillé is thick and heavy, and that means it has enough thermal mass to maintain a sear once the meat hits the pan. Now for my steaks, I am a late salter. Some people salt the day before and try to manage moisture being released and absorbed back into the meat, but I find that to be a lot of trouble for me anyway, and I don't see that much upside. So I've had my steak out of the fridge for about 45 minutes, let it come up to room temperature a little bit. Then I dry it with paper towels and salt and pepper it a couple of minutes before it hits the pan. I also like to rub it with a little bit of oil, putting the oil directly on the meat. I'll also put a little bit in the pan as well. And I'm using peanut oil here, as we'll be cooking at pretty high temperatures. And I've got some fresh rosemary and a little butter ready to go. Some people like thyme, some people like garlic. You can use whatever you like, but I like rosemary. And I've also got my oven preheated to 400 degrees Fahrenheit. And we'll use that to finish the steaks after we sear them. For this 11-inch pan, I'm going to use a medium gas burner and preheat the pan on medium-high to high heat. After about 2 minutes of preheating, I drop some water in the pan. If it sizzles, the pan is not hot enough, but when it starts to roll around like little ball bearings, I know the pan is up to temp. Now, on a side note here, this pan temperature would be way too hot for an egg, for example, but I think using that water flick water ball test works really well for browning proteins and searing steaks. I add a little peanut oil to the pan, wait for it to shimmer, then now, is there a better sound in all of cooking? Notice here how the sizzling continues. It did not stop when the steak hit the pan. The thick, heavy carbon steel has plenty of thermal mass to maintain a sear, and it's a good argument for having a thicker, heavier carbon steel for steaks rather than some of the lighter, thinner ones. And of course, everyone has his or her own preference for steak doneness. What I like to do is cook mine for about 2 minutes on the first side at higher heat, then give them a flip and another 2 minutes or so on the second side. And if I start noticing a lot of smoking, I will turn that temperature down to around medium. And for a steak like this with a strip of fat down the side, I probably spend another minute or so holding the steak on its edge to sear that fat a little. Now I add the butter and rosemary. I like to make sure the rosemary cooks in the butter a little to really infuse some of its flavor. Sometimes I use a spoon and baste this, but I think it works just as well to flip the steak and move it around just a little bit, a time or two. Make sure my rosemary is on top of the steak, and then I take the entire pan to a 400-degree oven to finish cooking until the internal temp of that steak is up to where my wife and I like it. And again, it's all personal preference here on how you like your steak, so you can adjust the cooking time in the oven for the thickness of the steak and how you like it done. Ours usually go about 4 minutes, and then the internal temp will be at 126, 127. We remove the pan from the oven, and note, leave a towel or a mitt on that handle because you won't be thinking about it. You'll turn around and that handle is actually now screaming hot, so make sure you don't burn your hand. Then we remove the steak to a plate, tint it, and let it rest. And that temperature internally will come up to 132, 133, which is a nice medium rare. And this method gives us a nice crust on the outside, a small ring of cooked steak, and then the reddish pink, soft, tender middle. Of course, if you like yours rarer or more well done, you can adjust the cooking times to your liking. And how did our carbon steel skillet do? I cleaned this guy up with simply hot water and a scrub brush and sponge, no soap. I think the seasoning looks pretty good. I can see a few little scratches in there from the metal tongs I used, and that's okay with carbon steel. But here, just to illustrate, I'm going to do a quick maintenance touch-up seasoning. Got the pan heated up on the burner again. Got a few drops of oil on a paper towel. Going to rub those around. Wipe the pan until it looks dry, let it smoke. And I think the seasoning is coming in and developing nicely and should get better the more I cook. If you want to get one of these debouillés for yourself, I have links and more information in the description below. This is how I like to cook a steak. How do you guys like to cook yours? If you enjoyed the video, make sure you like and subscribe, and we'll see you again next time on Uncle Scott's Kitchen.